You're live.
Welcome, folks. This is House Corrections and Institutions Committee. It is Tuesday, February 17th. We're starting our work this week, finishing up testimony for our capital budget, the proposed governor's capital budget adjustment. And we have with us Gus Seelig from Housing Conservation Board to go over some background of the HCB as well as the 2.8 million that's being requested in the governor's budget. So Gus, welcome.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. For the record, Gus Seelig, I'm the Executive Director at VHCB. With me is Stacy Subilia, who has been our Ag Director and is now our Associate Director of Conservation, and Liz Gleason, who runs the Farm and Forest Viability Program, which manages the water quality grants. And so we'll take turns at the table here. I understand you've heard from the Housing and Conservation Coalition last week. I didn't listen to their testimony, so I hope I'm not repetitive. And part of our goal here is not just to talk about the 2.8 million in the capital bill, but to make sure you know how what you saw last week was your constituents who utilize our fund. And maybe there's some other things that we can do for your constituents. So I want you to know, because you hear from them far more than I do, when you should tell them to make our phone ring. If you want to know why we're here, I've been in this room, I think, as long as the chair has been here. And some years that has been, because the budget's been really tight and the Appropriations Committee would ask for some help. And the rationale for why we're in the capital bill at all is that the benefits that we give Vermonters will still be there when the bonds are paid off. Because the housing we invest in has to stay currently affordable. The conservation benefits are permanent. So that was the rationale for why. And you'll find other states do spend capital dollars on conservation and on housing. And specifically in terms of water quality, when I was in this room about 2017, former member Butch Shaw said, isn't a lot of that conservation work, shouldn't we be counting that toward our water quality goals? And I said, sure. And he said, okay. And he really renamed a chunk of our funding, was his idea to rename a chunk of our funding in order to prove to the EPA, which had an order at that point just on Lake Champlain. Now there's an order on Lake Mega. But the state was taking those orders seriously and was investing to clean up. So that's how we got here. And we're pleased to say we support the governor's recommend here. This first picture is from Fletcher, and about 25 years ago, a group of alumni from our AmeriCorps program decided there ought to be a statewide mentoring program for kids who live in affordable housing. And they started the DREAM program. About 15 years ago, they came to us and said, we want these kids to have a summer experience. And so we helped them buy some land in Fletcher. Last summer, we helped them buy an island in the lake where the camp is located. And that's obviously water quality benefits here, but that's why we're opening there. Here's our statutory purpose. When we think about our work, we think about conservation in the broadest terms as rural community development, rural economic development, because the statute tells us that we're to pay attention to conservation, not just for its own sake, but for quality of life and for economic vitality. The photo here is a development that took 3 years to get through the courts in Putney, but part of the deal and part of the community support for this, and Mike Murwicki will tell you that despite the opposition of a single neighbor, the select board and the community was very supportive, was that 1 acre was maintained as a community garden for the whole community. This is right across from the co-op in Putney, and it's the site of the farmers market in summer. So it's a different way that we put housing and conservation together. I won't dwell on this slide because the chair just released it, but you can see what our transfer tax.
That's my district too.
Okay. I'm glad to be here. And I'm not going to say anything about this particular farm, but farmers who enroll in our program agree not to the 25-foot buffers that are standard under the required ag practices, but 50-foot buffers. We'll often in an easement have if we find a wetland, there'll be a wetland protection zone as well. So that's some of the ways in agriculture that we are trying to keep the waters of the state as positive as possible. This is what we did in housing writ large since the pandemic began. And I just would say thank you to all of you who've been here and supported one-time appropriations that were more than I would have ever imagined, and I have a vivid imagination. And what you'll see here is that we do pay attention to every aspect of the housing continuum. That includes home ownership. It includes manufactured home communities, which often have their own water and sewer problems, includes rental housing, includes, we started a program for farm workers to support farmers in improving their housing. We've always done accessibility improvements for people who, but for a ramp or a kitchen or bathroom modification, might have to leave their homes. So that if you know it, one of your constituents who becomes disabled, again, make our phone ring. And as the opioid epidemic increased, we began to fund recovery residences for people who are getting clean and wanting a safe place as they get out of their rehab facilities to be sober and have a sober living experience before they get to a more permanent place. Here's the range of housing that we're doing. You can see big community development in downtown St. Johnsbury, a shelter under construction in Hartford, recovery residents. And this last project in Shelburne is one where we created 26 units of home ownership on a site that there used to be a motel on. And among the 26 homeowners were two people who work at Wake Robin, a state police officer, a child care worker. So we're covering that end of the market of people who I call the essential workforce, who have to show up for a living. It's also, I think, one of the chefs at Shelburne Farms bought a condo here. So we think shows the success. There's also 66 units of rental housing, and I can tell you, though, a large portion of the folks that we house are elderly or disabled. 3/4 of the renters are in the workforce as well.
Thank you.
When we talk about rural community development and conservation, one of the things I was most moved by this year was a proposal from Vermont Adaptive and the Vermont Land Trust to give them a permanent home. Those of you who don't know about it, Vermont Adaptive, they work with disabled people, and their services to veterans wherever they come from are free of charge. They have work up down in Killington and up in Sugarbush area, and this gives them a permanent home. Their campus, which will be 18 acres, will include housing for their workforce at some point in the future. And there's about 150 acres of conserved land that will be for the trails and so on. So that was just, for me, a really moving project to hear about their work with veterans and their work with the disabled community at large. You'll see a lot of historic preservation work of what we call community gathering places. This is the store in East Calais. We've worked with stores in Putney, in Albany, one over in the Meadowee Valley. We worked with libraries. We were in Brandon last year for our board retreat. The adjustment to the library meant the disabled person for the first time was able to use the whole library because they could get in and there was a lift installed as part of the renovations that we supported. The conservation you see at the Whetstone Brook was the restoration of floodplain in downtown Brattleboro. 12 acres. It was Sir Sosimo's facility there for lumber. And when they were ready to sell, they basically took out a big berm. They took out a lot of fill to restore the floodplain and make the whole neighborhood safer in the case of flooding. We expect we'll get more applications like that in the future. Here, I just want to say we have a large pipeline, and I'm going to turn it over to Stacy to talk about our conservation work at large, but there's lots that we can do, lots ahead of us. This Bull Creek Commons headwaters in southern Vermont is another example where we're with a lot of water quality protections.
Right? That's
Cool. And if any of you who are old, we did send you an annual report electronically. If any of you want a hard copy because you're old like me or you get so much stuff, I'm happy to provide one. Right in the middle of it is a story about a classroom up at Lake Medford-Magog that we helped fund on the water. as an education source in terms of water quality.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having us. Once again, my name is Stacy Sabula, and I'm the Associate Conservation Director at the HCB. And as Gus said, I'm going to walk you through how our conservation programming uses this wonderful source of funds from the capital bill. So this is kind of an overview of how we work with our partners, and I'll tell you more in a moment about the Wolcott Community Forest, which is a great multiple conservation value kind of project. So basically, we provide grants to different conservation organizations, towns, groups like the Vermont Land Trust, who then work with landowners to conserve their land. And typically they're acquiring either conservation easements or outright acquiring the land, depending on the scale of the project. And as Gus mentioned, many of our projects do have water resources on them, and we make sure that all of those get special protections, whether that's adding a 50-foot buffer along a waterway or a special wetland protection area or vernal pools. I would say in a given year, at least half, probably more of the projects that come in the door have those special protections. And working farms are a large share of that, which I think sometimes surprises people, but those are great assets for natural resources as well as for the working landscapes. We love it when we can protect both of those things. So this project, the Wolcott Community Forest, was a partnership between the Trust for Public Land, Northern Rivers Land Trust, and the town. And this is a couple 100-acre parcel right next to the town school. So it's perfect for having kids out on the property for educational programming and hikes. So that's a big aspect of what they do. But it also got a large chunk of capital bill money because it has amazing water resources. It has tons of streams, wetlands, vernal pools. So we love to see this kind of project. It also is it features an affordable housing element to it. So there were a couple of acres along the road that local Habitat for Humanity wanted to partner with this group to put an affordable housing unit on that piece. So great project. The community is super excited to have this recreational resource and have all this land conserved right next to the school. So this is an overview of why do we do this work? Why does it fit in with our conservation goals? And I'm sure you're probably all familiar with all of the work being done in the state with phosphorus reduction in Lake Champlain as well as Lake Memphremagog. So a big part of this work is, like I mentioned, adding buffers and being able to take other measurements to help improve water quality, specifically for phosphorus. And we actually have a whole program around that up in the Memphremagog to provide grants to help support phosphorus reduction. Also, with all the talk about flooding that I know is on top of mind for everybody right now, preserving wetlands and those floodways. We know that in Montpelier, the swath of acreage around the North Branch Nature Center and all of that land along the North Branch actually was huge in helping mitigate the flooding, or at least preventing it from being worse here. So projects like that, like Gus mentioned, the Whetstone Brook project in Brattleboro were key, and things that we're always looking at when we can fund projects. And then also just enhancing wildlife and aquatic habitat is huge with this programming, making sure the streams are cool enough for cold water fisheries, which the anglers and other members of the fishing and hunting communities appreciate. And this picture here of the Long Pond Natural Area in Greensboro, this is a recent, I think it's actually going to be completed this week, so hot off the press. Nature Conservancy project up in Greensboro. TNC has done an awesome job protecting most of that lake frontage, it's very remote, very pristine. I think there's only 1 or 2 camps on the whole parcel, or whole lake, I should say. And it's this was the 12th project TNC had worked on in the area that we helped fund, and now there's a swath of 800 acres along the shore that's conserved. So great, and bond money went into that as well. So switching gears a little bit, another way that we use the bond money is with our farmland retirement program. So I'll preface it by saying that the core of our agricultural work is really keeping the working land going and supporting those types of operations. But we do also have funds in situations where it really no longer makes sense for those historic farms to be in place because the water quality implications are just too poor. Like a farm, picture a historic farm that's has sitting right next to the shore without any kind of buffer and doesn't have a place to stack manure, that kind of situation. So this particular programming is available to take farmland out of production and then restore the habitat on it. And so organizations like the Nature Conservancy, who have a big wildlife habitat focus and are really interested in water quality restoration, will work with other entities like the Department of Fish and Wildlife is another key partner to conserve this land and bring it back to a natural area. And so that's what happened here with the Goulet Farm in Addison. And often the state is also interested in doing this kind of project next to an adjacent wildlife management area so they can build upon that conserved land. So this is the case with this project. 3,000 acre Dead Creek WMA is right there. And 90 acres of wetlands ended up being conserved, 1.5 miles of really high priority streams, and has habitat for state threatened grassland birds like the adorable bobolink. Folks know what those look like if you're lucky enough to see one. And also this has public access on it available for recreational uses. And this particular property also has some unique archaeological resources that will be permanently protected. And another example, in this case, this is a working farm down in Putney, Sweet Pickens Farm. They are a poultry operation. They do pasture raised, as you can see, chickens, turkey, and they had been on land down the road from this parcel and had been doing so well business-wise, they needed to expand. And so they worked with Vermont Land Trust to acquire this other parcel, which has a number of wetlands on it and streams, and all of those are now being buffered through this conservation process, and the conservation funding helped them be able to afford the farmland more affordably. So very cool project down there. And these two infographics are really just showing across our portfolio of conserved lands in the state that VHCB has funded, what the breakdown in different land is. And again, I just point this out, and maybe this is apparent to many of you, but a lot of Vermont farms have a forest land associated with them and wetlands and natural areas. They're not just swaths of cropland. And so we love to point this out of terms of like, there's so many dual goals that come along with conserving working farmland and like conserving all these other great resources. And this bond funding is really pivotal to helping us do that. And okay, it's covered on my screen. I'm like, I think it's 80 miles. Yes, we've done have 80 miles of buffers on conserved farms across the state through our funding, and about 1,400 acres of wetlands. And that's in the last 5 years or so. So I'm sure there's even more than that, but that's what we've been tracking most closely. And I won't go into every detail on these metrics, but would encourage you, if you want to look back at the slide deck, feel free to review these and reach out with any questions. But this is just a breakdown of what we've been able to do in the last fiscal year in terms of acreage protected across our programming. I will point out another project that we're really excited about, the Camp Sunrise in Benson, which is a former Boy Scout property that they ended up having to sell. It was about 100 years old, and the council determined that they needed to sell it. At the same time, Outright Vermont, which is an LGBTQ ally organization that supports youth, had been looking for a camp for a long time. They had been leasing camps and just didn't have a permanent home and had to turn away campers because of that. And so they found out about this property and were so excited to finally have a place that they could call home, permanent home. And they worked with Vermont Land Trust to conserve this acreage, which is a couple hundred acres. It's a spit of land between two lakes, Sunrise and Sunset, and just an incredible property, both for recreation, both for being able to meet the mission of this great nonprofit, and then also has thousands of feet of stream frontage, a lot of which go into Otter Creek, and then a pretty substantial amount of frontage on both of these lakes. So another great community-oriented project.
If I can just interrupt, and looking at the, no, go back.
Oh, yeah.
The farmland and natural resources. I think it's important for the committee to realize that for the dollars that we put in, we do get federal dollars that are leveraged.
Thank you.
And then additional, like for natural areas, additional leverage funds. So it's not just these dollars that are used. You can leverage so much more.
Thank you.
I think that's,
Appreciate you pointing
I think
that.
that's important for people to balance this.
Yeah, and I will say that from the agricultural program perspective, we have a great partnership with NRCS, the Natural Resources Conservation Service, and they're typically providing half the match for all the projects we fund. And that's around $3 to $4 million a year. It's real money. In addition, for our natural areas projects, it's a host of different funding sources that partners bring, private philanthropic dollars, other state grant funding sources. So yes, thank you for mentioning that, that's a really key point, that we were able to leverage a lot of significant dollars to make this project work.
So are you seeing any threats at all to losing some federal dollars in the upcoming years at all?
Well, I can speak to the agricultural perspective, and if you want to chime in at all, us.
What I would say to you is that at the federal level, we had anticipated a lot of increases in lots of programs from the Inflation Reduction Act. And the new administration has fundamentally enhanced those things. So far, it appears that the programs that existed before that, such as our matching funds for farmland, are staying in place. So we're not asking you to repeal that, but we just, with everything federal, everything is uncertain right now. But the legislature, as you know, approved a bill called Act 59 that was planned for serving 30% of the state in the short term. Later on, and the resources that are going to be available for that kind of work are going to be much diminished from when that act was passed.
Are there any regulatory changes happening that you can see on the horizon?
I think the state has made, because of the EPA orders, the state has made a bunch of regulatory decisions to protect the lakes that EPA has identified. I think that, we may see other water bodies similarly compromised in the future. Whether this administration will be as aggressive as prior ones have been, which included the Trump one. I just think we don't know at this point.
Is there a list of farms that you're hoping to include in conservatory in the future? So that you're working your way down sort of the list, or?
Yeah, we have a big pipeline, as Gus mentioned. At this point, we work with our partners, like Vermont Land Trust is the partner doing the most farmland conservation, and we have an 18-month pipeline that has around 50 farms on it on average. So yes, there is a robust number of people that want to work with us and the Land Trust to conserve our land.
So I assume it's not
Yeah.
just first come, first, or first in,
Yeah.
first out. There's probably, must be criteria.
Oh, yes.
Preferred.
Yeah, we have a fun.
That kind of criteria in here any place?
Oh, well, no, but I'm happy to send that to you. Yeah, it's on our website, but I can send you the link to our funding guidelines, which
Just off the top of
stipulates.
your head, what
Yes.
are the features that
So,
are characteristics of it?
yeah, so what we look for are a range of both characteristics related to the operation itself and economic viability, things like that. But we also look at characteristics of the land. Does it have prime or statewide agricultural soils? That's something that is really obviously a clear indicator of productivity as it's good farmland. We also look at proximity to other working lands, proximity to conserved land. So if this particular farm is in a block, expanding upon, that's great. That's really good for habitat. We also look for other types of natural resources. It's always a checkbox if it has water resources that we can help conserve as well. But I would say that the most important factors are around soil quality, open land acreage, like a significant amount of open land to forest land acreage, excuse me. And then demonstration that this is a piece of working farmland, that it's commercially viable, or if it's not currently in production, has the ability to be brought back. Yeah, but happy to share with you the policy. Okay,
Yeah, thanks.
sure. Any other questions?
Yeah, just quick. Does it make any difference to the federal government when they do send money? Is it different for farmland and or natural areas, or is it kind of looked at as the same thing?
Well,
Like with matching funds?
Well,
it's different funding
it's very,
sources.
it's very different. So the,
Oh, it is.
the ASAL program, which is specifically for farmland, has specific tests around it. There's a different federal program called the Community Forestry Program that is obviously focused only on forests. We had to convince the federal government that maple was an agricultural activity of local importance. And that allowed us to then use their funds for what would be a large sugar bush. But we were able to do that. There's the Forest Legacy Program is focused again, like community forest programs, only on forests, not so much on open land. So different programs have different criteria. The Land and Water Conservation Fund, which is a long-term program the state's enjoyed, has part of its focus on recreation benefits for the public.
Thanks, guys. Yeah.
Any other comments or questions? Let's turn it over to my colleague Liz. Talk about her viability program.
Thanks, Cece.
Yeah. For the record, again, I'm Liz Gleason. I run our farm and forest viability program and rural economic development initiatives. I'm going to focus mostly on the water quality grant program that we run using bond dollars. But I also want to share a little bit about the range of programming that we do. So you've heard about the HCB's mission overall and our conservation work. The Farm and Forest Viability Program and the Rural Economic Development Initiatives are really based around economic vitality and working directly with clients in communities. So we're direct service programs. The Farm and Forest Viability Program is a business development coaching program for all kinds of farms and forest businesses. We work with between 100 and 200 businesses a year doing individualized business development work. So it could be helping them plan for growth. It could be around working on profitability. It could be a transfer plan to new owners as the older generation exits. And you can see some of our impacts down here at the bottom. These are all really sort of economic development indicators that we're really proud of. We also consider this to be a real sort of quality of life kind of program. Agriculture and forestry are businesses. They take a toll on your body and can be just a challenging place to carve out an income. But we have a lot of really amazing, successful businesses in the state. The agricultural sector, including food manufacturing, is an $11.3 billion industry. The last time it was measured in whole by the Farm to Plate programming. So it's a pretty significant portion of what we've got going on economically in the state. And it's really critical that those businesses are viable and sustainable into the future. So last year, we saw that on average, our clients increased their sales by over 50,000 and 100% felt that they had improved their management skills, which is really kind of our primary focus area is improved management skills so that folks can into the future make really solid decision-making based on accurate financials. And we saw that in 2025, clients we worked with also accessed over almost $5.5 million in grants and loans for business growth and improvement. So we put up at a little over $1 million a year in contracts to business planners to work on the ground with that 100 to 200 businesses. And we saw those clients with support from the program and with their business plans access almost $5.5 million. So we're pretty stoked about that. This is just a graphic that shows sort of how our program works. The Farm and Forest Viability Program is a network, not one single individual program. So we work with farm and forest business planners at all of these organizations to deliver our sort of shared program model. We work in Vermont, but we have partnerships across the country too to learn from other kinds of organizations to do this work. And not to toot our own horn, but this program is really unique in the country. We're one of the most stable, consistent programs.
largely because of stable, consistent support through the Vermont legislature. So a farmer or forest business can walk in any year at any time and have almost immediate access to services that are consistent over time, which is really rare in the whole country. So I'm not going to read these all out, but we work with a really amazing network of organizations to do this work. The Rural Economic Development Initiative, I'm going to sort of bounce around just because I want to talk about READY quickly, and then I'm going to go back to the farm work and really get into the water quality grants. So Rural Economic Development Initiative was created in large part under the leadership of former Senator Starr. The goal is really to help small communities and working lands businesses access big, complex dollars that they might not be able to get on their own. So whether you're a small town trying to navigate improving your water and wastewater so that you can add housing or economic development activity downtown, or you're a farm trying to get a really big USDA value-added producer grant, we basically set up organizations or businesses with grant writers who can help shepherd their project through the complex, usually federal grant writing process. Because we know we have a lot of small businesses and small towns that don't have like full-time staff or really dedicated grant writers. And bringing someone in at that key point can help really get the dollars in the door. So since 2017, we've spent about $1.2 million on READY. And the communities who have successfully gotten a grant with support have accessed, I think that says 35.5. Yes, there's a little pop up on my screen. So we're really psyched about that. We also work with right at this point between 40 and 60 communities a year, not all of whom are actively writing and securing that grant. A lot of them are sort of getting ready, putting the pieces in place. So we know that there's an even bigger sort of leverage in terms of community capacity than this 35 million.
So that 35 million grants to communities, that's not money from VHCB.
No,
That you've put towards helping these smaller communities that don't have grant writers on staff to supply those grant writers so that they can go after different grants that are available.
exactly. Thank you. Yeah, the 1.2 million is what we've spent, and the 35.5 is what those communities have successfully accessed thus far. In mostly federal dollars, but there's some philanthropic and state dollars in that 35.5 million as well. But you charged us to focus on federal dollars because of how hard they can be to access. We didn't want to limit eligibility to just that because a lot of organizations need a mix of funding or aren't quite ready for the federal, and we felt like it was important to be able to support along that range, including state and philanthropic. I'm going to bounce away from READY, but if anyone has any more questions on it, I'm always delighted to talk about the READY program. So water quality grants, this is primarily what is under your purview. I'm just going to give an overview and talk about a couple of recent projects. Please interrupt me at any point if you have questions. So we've been doing these since 2017 when we were asked to be part of the state's overall clean water budget. These are grants directly to farmers to help them implement long-term infrastructure projects that will improve water quality in the state, primarily by reducing nutrient runoff into waterways. So that can include anything from like manure pit infrastructure to improved grazing that will improve soil health. We try to be as broad as we possibly can, knowing that different farms have different ways that they will improve water quality. So since 2017, we've awarded just under $5.5 million. We typically fund 15 to 25 projects a year. Last year it was 16 new projects for about 600,000, and those leverage almost 3 million. So again, these projects are, a lot of them are really big. A lot of them are working with the NRCS, or the Agency of Agriculture's Best Management Practices program, where you have a lot more technical staff, and those projects are big and complex and take many, many years. And we can help be a more flexible funder to get the whole budget across the finish line on these really big projects. So that's where you see that super high leverage from, and you can see in this chart that there's a lot of USDA money, there's Agency of Ag money, and then there's a good chunk of farm cash. And I'm also feeling like this pie chart, the numbers are right, but the colors are not right. It's always great to get in the room and try to have to present and then realize. But the numbers are all correct. So really that 600 should be more like a quarter or whatever. Someone can do better, quick off the top of their head math than I can.
Joe? you have-
So
Yeah,
what kind of match that USDA funds require? Is that what the BHCD monies are used for?
yeah, it's not that the USDA necessarily requires match. It's more that those projects are often quite large, and need additional funding to get out the door. They might have a 10% match requirement. I think NRCS and the Agency of Ag both use 10%, but I could be wrong. Also, they have a maximum limit, and some really big projects or farms that have multiple projects hit the limit that NRCS will cover, but still have really critical infrastructure they need to improve. And so those are all the times that folks might come to us.
I see.
So I have a question on the 16 grants totaling the 611,000 in 25. Is that calendar or fiscal?
That what we do one round of awards a year that works sort of at the best time with farmer schedules and NRCS schedules and BMP schedules. So that's what we did in fiscal year 25. And we do them every year right around now. We are deciding on fiscal year 26 next month. And
So those are the water quality grants that came out of the capital budget, right? So you had 800,000 for FY 25.
Stacy and I split. So she gets 200 for that farm retirement that she was talking about at the end. And we allocate 6 to these direct farmer grants.
So in 26, the current year, the 800,000, is that being divvied up the same way?
That's what we've been doing for the last several years. I think that's what's on the docket for us right now. Yeah.
There's greater demand in that programming through Liz's program, the farmer, direct farmer grants and for farm retirement. So it's kind of how we've made that determination.
This is Severy Farm down in Cornwall. This was one of those sort of big projects that was co-funded with the Agency of Agriculture. They had been working with on the grounds of technical staff to develop out this big set of improvements. They have a stream that runs quite close to where their barnyard is, and they made some pretty major improvements to the manure pit, to sort of all the barnyard areas where cows are spending a lot of time to keep manure from running off into that waterway. So we put in some funding that helped the farm be able to implement a really large project along with the Agency of Agriculture. And this farm has also worked with us through our farm business planning program. And I just hear really great things about their management, that they're really working hard to improve soil health, soil quality, take really good care of their animals, and also make sure that nutrients are staying on the farm in the soil as much as possible.
Do you have a chart that's going to tell us, you're telling us how much has been awarded? How much is being requested?
Yeah. So we also separately sent you a report on any capital bill dollars that are not yet out the door and their anticipated time of spending. So I think we have about, it's either 4, 5, or 6 water quality grants with, I think, now I'm forgetting which fiscal year we're talking about. We do have a handful that have not yet gone out the door yet, in terms of like we committed the dollars, but the farm hasn't yet requested them. Usually it's because the projects take a really long time and we prefer that folks are completely done before we disperse the full grant award. So those details, I think, are in the report.
Yeah, I'm not smart enough to ask for the details. It's more like,
Yeah.
there's 25 farms that need
Yeah.
help. You've been able to help 5. That,
Oh, like,
how big is the
demand.
demand
Yeah.
versus what you're able to satisfy? Is it 50/50 or is it overwhelming? Or-
Depends on the year.
Yeah.
So last year, the 611, it wasn't quite as competitive. This year, we are looking at, I'm reading 31 applications right now for, I think $1.3 million in requests. So we'll be able to fund a little under half.
So there's more need out there than what there is funding.
It
yes.
varies year to year about how the demand flows, but this year it's more than 2 to 1. Well, there's a request every dollar.
And is that demand driven by ignorance that they can get money, or is it because of climate? Or, I mean, what's that variable? I would think that once farmers know there's money out there, they'd be clamoring for it one way or the other.
I think that there are a lot of factors that could go into it, including whether somebody has an enforcement action that they're dealing with from state government. That might drive somebody to decide to apply when they thought their practices were okay. So I think there's a lot of things. The availability of the federal funds as a match could drive when somebody applies to us. So I think there's a lot of different things.
Yeah.
And if you think about how stressful it is to be a farmer today, having to do paperwork and fill out an application may not be at the top of the list of problems that you are managing when you have an ill cow or problems managing your labor or labor that's worried about ice or whatever the issue might be.
Right.
So there's plenty more work for us to do. It just doesn't come in a steady flow.
And I will say that getting twice the dollar amount in requests than we can award this year is going to be tough and it's hard to choose. And in terms of the realm of other competitive grant programs in the state for farmers, I just got off a Working Lands grant review process and they had like 10 times the number in requests. So I think these water quality grants, like you want to have your project ready to go, you want to be working with the technical experts. So I would say 2 to 1 is a pretty healthy ratio.
Thanks.
Just to enhance the answer, we're the water quality provider for Lake Memphremagog. And one of the things that holds up projects in that program is the availability of engineers. So actually figuring out what you're going to do, getting it priced, all that stuff can lead to delays.
I can understand the delays. I just was, okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, that's certainly the case on the farm side too.
Well,
No, I guess my question, we heard testimony last week about enforcement actions regarding the clean water stuff. Generally, are your applications focused on enforcement actions from the state, or is there a wide?
No, it's a wide variety from people who are doing, way ahead of the game in terms of compliance to folks that are really struggling. And we will sometimes fund applications from people who are not currently in compliance with the required agricultural practices if the project is specifically designed to get them back into compliance. In terms of the more serious enforcement actions, it would have to be really on a case by case basis.
So you guys do prioritize enforcement action issues?
I am right now feeling like I don't remember what enforcement action means compared to some of the other steps along the regulatory process. But if people are sort of at the most extreme and where they're like working with ANR, then it would be really on a case by case basis. If that project was really gonna significantly get the farm back on track and improve water quality, we would certainly consider it. But most often we're working with folks who've been, have gotten, their farm specialists out on the farm and they're like, we really suggest you look into this. Let me connect you with the technical folks who can write up a plan for you to make sure that you don't become out of compliance with the required eye practices, or you already are, let's get you back in. So it's mostly really sort of voluntary people recognizing a problem and working to fix it.
The other thing I would say to you is that we work closely both with ANR and the Agency of Ag, both of whom have representatives on the VHCB board. And this particular committee is chaired by the Agency of Ag, is that correct? Or-
Yep, the Agency of Ag, we have a set of reviewers who represent everyone from DEC, Agency of Ag, farmers, soil health, climate and scientists. So we really try to have a great representative sample for the reviewers.
And I think this particular program itself was the brainchild of Representative Shaw. And I think the reason he asked us to do it was he thought we'd get the dollars out quickly. I think one of the things that we learn about this program as time goes on is there's also people who never get to the top in terms of qualifying for NRCS. And sometimes we're the thing that makes the project happen, even without some of the big dollars from the feds. So that's another role we play is here's somebody who's not in crisis, and therefore they never reach the top of the priority list for another funding source, but they're ready to go and we can help them get it done sooner.
For sure. Yep. Just a couple other examples of kind of the range of projects that have been funded here. So Savory Farm was a dairy. These three businesses are livestock, bread and butter in Shelburne, Groff's Kettle in Charlotte, and Pegasus Meats in South Bureau. So all of, we've got two of these were sort of bedded pack barns, which can help you move from liquid to solid manure management, which can be a really strong water quality improvement. And then bread and butter was around grazing infrastructure. So that's keeping cows in the right place. So they're outside of sensitive areas or wetter areas. It can really improve soil health, which means the rain sinks in better, which means the soil is healthier and everything stays where it is instead of running off into waterways. So those are just some of the project examples. I am going to take just one more minute to talk about another grant program that we run that is not water quality grants, and then I think we'll have a couple of minutes if there's more questions. So this is more tied back to our farm and forest viability business planning program. And I'm wishing I had put this slide up there, but we can bounce around. That's fine. So after folks finish a business or a transfer plan with our business planning program, working really in depth with their business planner, they can apply to us for a small, what we call implementation grant. Just the least fun sounding name for a grant. But these are really fun. They're great small projects. They're up to 8 to 10,000 based on the year. Folks who have spent a really long time analyzing their financials, figuring out what project is really going to make a difference for their business and the local economy. We typically make between $100,000 and $200,000 available for those grants in any given year when we have the funding. And they have funded some really fun projects. So Lincoln Peak Vineyard in New Haven is a really neat vineyard. We worked with them when the previous owner was trying to retire. He wanted to see if his daughter would take over the business. It wasn't going to be a good fit. She didn't want to run a vineyard. She had another job. It transferred to a different vineyard. They decided they didn't really want to run it. So it's like went through a lot, and it's a beautiful spot. It has an amazing tasting room. And this couple ended up buying it about a year and a half ago, and they have really taken off. We gave them a small grant to help with some of their processing equipment, including all these very exciting yellow bins right behind them. But it'll help make that moment from harvest to turning the grapes into juice like way more efficient. It's a really intense time on a vineyard. It's like 3 weeks of just like, you've never worked so hard ever, and you won't again until next year. So we're really excited about this project. And there's a couple more on here that have gotten small grants, including one for goat cheese, and then Digger's Mirth, I think, was some processing veggie harvesting equipment. I can't actually remember now. Anyway, I'm gonna stop talking and see if you all have any more questions.
Question, Sean.
Just, I'm from Shelburne, so, and bread and butter farm. So is that because they're so close to the pond? Is that their problem with runoff and stuff up there? You sounded like it was wetland stuff, and I know where the farm is. I was
Yeah.
curious.
They weren't having like an active runoff issue. This was a preventative thing. they were actually taking a lot of land that had been in corn, they were expanding, and they were transitioning to this bigger grazing business, so they wanted to keep the cows in the right place and not off that more sensitive, wetter area. I don't believe that was a project that was like, we had manure running off right into the stream or anything like that. Preventative about soil health and about nutrient retention right there on the fields.
Farms that are up in that area that could use some help with
Yeah.
runoff that
Give us a call.
okay.
There's a property in Colchester, I think it was Fitzgerald.
Farm retirement projects we worked on. Farm retirement, so we said,
Mhm.
yeah, this one is here. Okay, thank you.
No, we're taking land out of production. The biggest issue there is who wants to own the land once it's been retired, because it's not making money for an owner.
Right.
So we've had several deals, and I can't remember the specifics of that one where Fish and Wildlife, there's one up in the Northeast Kingdom on the Connecticut River that Fish and Wildlife took about half the acreage. It was a fee acquisition by them. Retirement.
Very basic question. So two on the side, I can tell what they are. What is Digger's Mirth Collective?
Yeah, Digger's Smith is a vegetable business down at the Interville Center in Burlington.
Anybody? Thank you.
Any other questions? So this is where the 2.8 million goes. Everything that was discussed today. It's part of it, plus what happens upstairs. Or wherever.
Downstairs.
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 They've been upstairs forever.
They move around.
Yeah. Anything else?
Well, thanks very much.
Anything else, Chris?
I hope we weren't competitive of testimony or test Friday. Make our phones ring when we think we need these sessions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, folks.
Have a good week.
Thank you. Intake committee members, we got work.
Oh. Let's see if there's any line. Who's hanging around?
I think so, yeah. He's doing the guest chair.
Yes.
I'll probably do it.
Well,
Yeah.
get the party started on that. Let's get the party started on this one. Yes, sir.
Yes. Get the brownies.
You had the first course.
I am so full. I want to spend some time, recommend to the appropriations bill. This was posted on our webpage. There's hard copies for folks. Okay. This was posted on our website. I want us to, these are the items that House Appropriations Committee wants us to weigh in on. Give our recommendation. Back to. There's 5 sections. One section does not pertain to us. It's the one at the top. That is transportation. I don't know why they included that. I think because it deals with a building, so they were thinking it pertained to us. Doesn't pertain to us. That's the T-bill.
Yeah.
There's a section of the appropriations bill, the big bill that appropriates the cash fund. I don't know where we are in terms of where we overlap with the big bill at this point. I know I've had some questions from higher up folks about the cash fund. I'm assuming we will be asked to help, but I haven't heard anything directly yet. Heard some allusions to it, but I haven't heard anything.
Has
Yeah.
there been any numbers attached to these? No.
Not yet. But they know there's a good chunk of cash out there. So I think it's too early at this point. I think there was the chair of approach said that will happen as they start working more on the appropriations bill. They're still taking testimony on that. And that's what she indicated to end of last week.
It's kind of a tangentially to that. Everything that comes in here has some sort of merit, but I think there's also, relative merit. And there are some programs you could probably have slight reductions and it wouldn't change their mission that much. And not that you would want to do that, but that's gonna be a necessity at some point if that's how the cash fund works. We get what we're given, right? We don't really have any direct input on that at the end of the day.
I'm hoping to start markup on the capital bill towards the end of next week is what I'm thinking. I don't know. I mean, we've got some bills we need to get out. That's, bills on the wall. And I want to do as much of that as we can prior to the week we come back after the town meeting break, because when we come back after town meeting break, that Friday, first week back is crossover. So any bills that we don't get out by the 26th, 27th of next week, we'll have to spend the week we come back on those bills at the same time we're marking up the capital. I'd like to
ideal.
kind of clean our plate before, so that when we start focusing on markup of the capital bill, we'll be bringing back more people to testimony. Trust me. And we'll have to move a lot of money around because there's a lot of requests out there that are not in the governor's proposed capital bill. So the next item is, there's two things here: payment in lieu of taxes. It's a pilot project. These are payments that go out to the communities that have state buildings. It could be a courthouse, could be a correctional facility, could be a state office building. When there's a state building that is in a community, that state building comes off the tax rolls. There's no local property taxes that are applied to it, but there's an agreement with the state that we make a payment in lieu of property taxes to the community. Montpelier gets a lot, St. Albans, Rutland, Newport,
Oh,
Johnsbury.
they get short thrift of what they get.
But this is the appropriation, so I'm assuming we would support what's
Yes.
being recommended.
Yeah, it's kind of weird that we're weighing in on it. to be
I know, but
honest.
every year we have
Yeah.
to weigh in on.
So, I mean, historically, if you were a shire town in early Vermont history, that was an economic benefit. Right, to have the courthouse and other fixings of county government, but now it's a detriment financially.
So this has been there forever, the pilot program, so that is section E144 and then E338. This one comes out of corrections directly for an additional amount to their pilot project, their pilot payment for Newport and Springfield.
Why is that pulled out separately?
Because it was negotiated between the city or the town and the state when they agreed to house the facility.
Yeah.
But those are new numbers beyond the.
No, they've been ongoing, but it's a separate appropriation on top of the other. The other one is in section E144, so that comes out of a different part of government. Section E338 deals directly with corrections, so it comes out of the corrections budget.
So those deals were set up whereby they get to renegotiate rates, Newport.
I don't think they renegotiate, it's on top of what they
It's
currently, on
what they-
top of what they would normally get for pilot. This is an additional amount that they would get. And sometimes that could be used for additional emergency services like ambulance or fire.
Yeah,
It all depends how it was negotiated between the
understand.
state and the local community when they were agreeing to house a correctional.
so how is that incremental number? How is it different for those two places than it is for the other host communities?
I think the 152 is probably split in half between the two. We can ask, it'd
just
be
curious.
DOC.
Well, the
Yeah,
difference,
you got one.
the difference is that they
They
negotiated.
negotiated a
When this,
long time
when they
ago.
said, we'll take the institution, we want the pilot plus. And so that's what this reflects. It's not like there's a renegotiation every year. I don't believe Alice will know better. But when they said, we'll take them, but we want pilot plus.
So when
basically.
Newport was housed, when Newport and the Newport facility was being built, that was back around 1994, 93, 94. Springfield came along about 1999. And those amounts were negotiated back then. It's in a contract between the state and those local.
I get it. I mean, there was a guy in Swanton about 30 years ago. He was a boat dealer and he sold the guy a boat and the guy wanted to trade it in like a week later. And he offered him 2/3 and wouldn't pay for it. And the guy complained. He's like, look, it's not my fault. You're stupid. So good for Springfield and Newport, I guess.
So, well.
So,
Okay.
so I think most of that was answered about.
We're the guy who sold the boat.
Or we had discussed that last year when we
It's
did
every
the
year.
approval.
Yeah. It's every year.
And so I guess now it's just those two communities and not the other 4 facilities. But my question was actually under E144. Do we know what that total amount for the pilot payments are gonna be this year?
You'd have to ask the probes.
I'll ask.
You'd have to ask the, I don't know what the total amount would be. I don't think it's in the document that we received. I sent out all the probes information to you folks.
Yes.
I don't think it was in those.
I don't know.
I think that's one of those things they can't change any.
Right.
It's in
Yeah,
the statutes.
So, did we find out if those third or fourth positions are available at the supervision for the license plates?
I have not heard anything.
They're coming back in. DOC's gonna come back in.
So
Kevin?
did I understand, but these two are negotiated? So how do we weigh in on either one of these?
You really don't.
We don't, because it's already been
Just a rubber
negotiated,
stamp, say,
just to let them know that, yeah.
Not even a rubber stamp. I don't think we can.
But like, so
We could say, no, we don't want to do it, but you're gonna violate a contract,
rationale, or we.
because we don't want to spend the money.
Oh,
But you have an agreement, but you have an agreement with those communities, so you're violating an agreement.
no, that's what I said, okay.
Sean,
so the top one, I just have a quick question because.
we're not part of that.
So that central garage does not come,
No.
that's a T fund then, that's not institutions at all.
No.
That's why I wanted
I
to.
think they thought it was for us. 'cause
Okay,
it
that's what I'm
dealt with the
thinking. I'm
building.
trying to think like, why did they put that
They
in
did.
there?
I
Okay.
think because they thought it was a
'Cause-
building.
Okay,
Just an oopsie.
yep.
Yeah.
Got it.
Real quick, Alex,
Mhm.
because I was curious about the statute for 338. And it doesn't say anything specifically about those two facilities. It just says for correctional facilities.
Right, but it's what was agreed to when there was a contract. It wouldn't be in,
So it's in a contract. Okay. Sorry.
Based on statute.
Okay, based on statute. Perfect.
and it was agreed to for those two facilities that would come out of corrections budget. Or pilot comes out of another budget. I think probably out of administration, agency administration, I think.
Okay.
So then if you flip it, up the page, this is where we're gonna be spending a lot of time with pretrial supervision. The pretrial supervision program is gonna be taking a different direction. I've brought you folks up to speed, right? In terms of what House Judiciary is thinking, what we're thinking, to scrap part of that program.
Mhm.
There is concern, the state's attorneys have brought up, and Kim McManus
Big names.
is coming in tomorrow. And she mentioned to Representative Lalonde that there is a very, very narrow group of folks that come through arraignment who are high risk,
Mhm.
really high risk. And
Can you clarify high risk for what?
reoffending or high
Reoffending.
risk, yeah.
Not
Like Connor.
absconding.
Right, it's not absconding, it's just high risk. And the alternative is to detain them in a correctional facility, but they don't need that level of detention, but
Mhm.
they need a level of supervision out in the community
Mhm.
with wraparound services, and they would do better. So she was thinking if the pretrial supervision could be geared towards that population. And yes, it's voluntary on the person's part, whether or not to participate in a pretrial supervision program or not. But if they know the alternative is to be incarcerated, to be detained, then she's thinking people would be more apt to participate under the pretrial supervision, and then you have the wraparound services. So that's one direction of looking at this tomorrow. for
just
this. Mhm.
whenever you're ready. My question is, if those people exist, and I'm sure they do, then why aren't they taking advantage of it now?
Because it's voluntary and there's no, if you don't do it, then you're gonna end up incarcerated. There isn't that linkage.
So this is a question that's really tailored to you. So would we have to change the statute somehow to,
Mhm.
okay,
Yep. Sure.
And 200 grand isn't a lot, you know where
Okay,
that.
well, I'm getting there.
All right.
I'm getting
I just wanted to set you up.
Yeah. So, and then there's another situation too for the pretrial supervision in terms of looking if we're sending different folks to pretrial supervision than what was initially envisioned under the current statute. Then what does DOC in the statute, what do we need to change in terms of their supervision level? And that's what we need to talk with DOC tomorrow when they come in. I think it's tomorrow when they come in, because if it is a higher risk person that they're going to be supervised, is a phone call once every other week adequate? And that's the question to ask DOC, because they may want a higher level of supervision, and we may have to tweak the statute around that for level of supervision. So I just want to put that out on the table for us to think about.
Makes them a high level, and do they keep doing
It
things?
depends what happens on the court in terms of what they're seeing for high risk. Could it be for absconding? Is it fleeing
Again, as
or public safety?
what does this mean? They've over and over again have done something?
Right now, the way the pretrial supervision is established, you need 5 or more dockets. The thinking was doing away with that completely.
Mhm.
So it could be a first-time offense. Depends what their risk level is of flight, or their risk level is of reoffending, or their risk level of public safety. So that's something we'll have to get into. Okay. The other piece that's being talked about is for that accountability docket, that it gets rolled out to the other courts besides Chittenden County. Question is, how many courts? And the thinking is it'd be 1 day a week that each court would put aside for the accountability docket. Okay, so then the next thought is, well, could we have a PMP person sitting at the court that day? So that the person comes out, they're sent to pretrial supervision, or maybe any other supervision, I don't know. That PMP person could be the hub to set up wraparound services. So if that's a model that we want to do, the question then of DOC is, do you have enough personnel to do this right now within your current probation parole offices? Because you did hire some people for the pretrial supervision. I think they hired 3 people, but they're up in the northern part of the state. So I've asked Haley to kind of look at this and see the lay of the land. Now, what the governor has proposed here in front of us is 200,000 in addition to what's currently there, and I'll get into that. 200,000 to go towards 7 permanent PMP officers. And they would be dedicated to the DOC pretrial supervision program. So the question is, do they need 7? The other question is, we have appropriated in FY 24, 660,000 for pretrial supervision. We also appropriated in FY 26, 650,000 for pretrial supervision, for a total of 1.15, right? No, 1.2. 1.210.
Because you got 60 in there, right?
So we have 1.2 million already appropriated and probably available, because we have hired some folks out of that 1.2 million plus. So we need to know how much of that is left. Okay? Because if we restructure the pretrial supervision. If we don't need all of those 7 positions, it can absorb some of this internally in DOC with their field offices. We add 200,000 to the current 1.2, we're at 1.4 million. But some of those dollars might be able to be directed towards the courts to get them started or to start doing the accountability doc. Those are all the moving pieces that are not in place yet.
But the first moving piece is why it's not being used, and it sounds like it like it's gonna require some kind of statutory change.
Yeah.
'Cause right now, it's not being used because people can be out in their own cognizance with no conditions, or they could agree to be on conditions, for the most part.
You missed a lot of that testimony that we had, a lot of reasons for the pilot project with the accountability docket that they're not going into pretrial supervision is because the wraparound services are being provided, so they don't need to be supervised. That's the big piece in the pilot project. That's the big piece. The other big piece is that the defendant has to be voluntarily agreeable, and many times they're not. But the bigger piece in that accountability docket, why we only had 1 person, was because the wraparound services are being provided and they could work them through the court system really quick. Brian and then Connor.
And maybe I'm just putting it out there and don't need an answer to everything. Maybe it's a testimony question, but you know, to get back to what Troy brought up, 200,000 divided by 7 doesn't work. And then in terms of the P&P officers, are we looking at hiring some 0.2 FTEs for 1 day per week here, and here? Are we looking for people to go around? Okay.
Gotta work with
And
you.
then the number of people that we're talking about observing is going to change, obviously. And so we got somebody who can speak to that too from judiciary or somebody.
Be DOC and judiciary, because they're looking at this in judiciary committee as well.
Well, yeah, and if we're changing the number of dockets or, something about who qualifies for this, they can
And
test
what
that.
court, and what court is
Yes.
gonna be doing it.
Yeah,
So I just asked Martin, I asked him, so what courts are doing this? He said, we don't know yet.
yeah, 'cause that seems like DOC and judiciary, right? But yeah.
Yeah, so they're looking at it as the same time we are, and Hillary has got another draft that's gonna incorporate some of this. Based on the conversation I had with Martin, and Martin sat down with Hillary Friday afternoon to bring both of our concerns to her. So she's coming in tomorrow with a new draft. It is tomorrow, right? Because we're doing detainees today.
Okay. Yeah.
She's coming in tomorrow.
Okay.
But do they know that they've got services within the communities?
Well, that's the other question you'll have to ask.
Because that's huge. You can connect it, but a lot of our agencies are saying they are at max.
Yeah. So there's a lot of moving pieces here. There's the money that right now is in 2 fiscal years goes directly to pretrial supervision that may need to be moved somewhere else. And then if we do this new model and the accountability docket and trying to have a DOC person there at the courthouse, can they do that now without hiring? If not, then how many would they have to hire and where? Connor?
Chair, I might need a refresher. I'm a little rusty on the position pool. My
Yeah.
my recollection was the position's vacant for 6 months. Unless they can justify keeping it, HR grabs that position, yanks it into the pool. They can put new titles in it as needed with new positions. So I'm wondering, are they,
The vacancy pool?
yeah, so it's like, are they yanking 7 positions out of that, but they don't have enough money there? So that's the 200 on top of that to fund the 7? I think that might be it,
That might be it.
yeah.
I didn't follow that, Connor. I'm sorry.
There's a vacancy pool.
Yeah.
The departments give up positions when that hasn't been filled for a long time,
Yes.
and it goes into this big pool. But the money, does the money go?
The
with
money goes with it,
Goes with-
so if you have a need in your department over the fiscal year, you could say, I need a new position that I gotta create. It's like, okay, well, we got these positions in the pool, you give up that position.
So we also need to
Retitle the new one.
by 200 divided by 7 because nobody's taken these positions?
No.
No.
There might be 7 positions in the pool that come with money, but not enough.
But not enough, and
And
maybe
they're
the
not coming
200
from
gets to that
DOC.
number, right?
But shouldn't they have told us that?
That's for us to
That's a
ask,
guesstimate, that's a conjecture right now.
right? That's for us to ask.
All right.
for us to ask. That's why they want us to look into
Is
it.
that, is there someplace we can find what's in the pool right now?
That'd be HR, yeah.
So we're trying to get DOC back in here to finish talking about the budget, and this will be part of it. And this can be part when DOC's in testifying on the pretrial supervision. And ask them about these positions and where they're coming from and the money. So there's a lot of moving pieces to this, and I don't think it's gonna get done by Friday. But we can give a heads up to approach, because this is all gonna play out in the big bill over the next few weeks. Sean?
So just stepping back a little bit from pretrial, because it seemed to me that we were getting a lot of, and I don't know if I'm stating the same thing again, but it just seemed like it wasn't working. So we're hoping that if we mandate it, it'll work.
Know that we changed the requirements of getting there. Right now, part of it is 5 dockets or more. We get rid of that.
Okay,
And
got
we
it, got it.
retweak who would be eligible for. it. But the bigger piece is, we're not scrapping it totally, we're
Oh,
scrapping
so
it.
it opens the net wider.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're not scrapping it totally, we're scrapping it. Because nobody really supports the current structure of it, because it's
Right,
not working. But let's see if we can keep little bits of it and redefine it for a population that could take advantage of this. Knowing that if part of the pre-trial, I don't want to even say pre-trial supervision, because it isn't. If we could put some DOC, P&P officers in the courtroom on the accountability day, the day that they deal with the accountability dockets. And then when the person is released back to the community, that they go to the DOC person, and the DOC person hooks them up with the community providers for wraparound services. So they don't need to be supervised by DOC.
Okay.
And if this is one time and not base, then are we talking about a 1-year surge or less,
This is
basically?
base.
It is base. The 200 is.
I would assume so, because the 1.2 million is base.
Is also. So this would be ongoing after a year after. Yeah, okay.
1.2 right now is base, and they haven't expended. I
Well,
don't know how much they've expended. It's base in DOC's budget, I believe,
660 to 650 is 13.
1.3.
Yeah.
So you don't do math in public. So it's 1.3 plus 200,000, 1.5 million. That's,
And rolling.
so they may have like out of the 1.3,
Mhm.
they may have 1.2 left.
Oh, right, they
Because they've
spent some of
hired
it
some
last year.
people.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But how does 200,000 pay for 7
It
people?
doesn't.
No,
Did you hear what Connor said?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm
I
right,
don't know.
but that would be my theory on
Right,
it.
I know, but I'm like, that's where I'm just going back to, it's like, anyway.
It depends, because there's money that follows those positions that went into position.
Oh. Yes.
So those are the moving pieces right now in the
Mhm.
pretrial supervision. I mean, we're scrapping it, but we're redesigning it supposedly. And then we got to redesign DOC's role in it.
And our,
Okay, so that's what we're gonna be working on tomorrow.
okay.
And Hillary has incorporated my thinking and Martin's thinking into a new draft. Kevin?
It's the reason we want to hold on to the term pre-trial and not just fold all of these good ideas into it's not accountability court, because that's the wrong term. And what's the right
Accountability docket.
docket? Why have two separate? Why not wrap it into the accountability docket?
We haven't decided that yet.
That's a good idea,
Yeah,
Kev.
we haven't decided.
Instead of.
Because what we have heard is the accountability docket in Burlington worked well, but in some of the outliers, maybe they only needed 1 day a week, and you send the Tiger team to that one day a week there, including DOC, and
That's what I was trying to ask about. Are they mobile or is it just a 0.2 FTE, you know?
That's what we need to ask DOC.
Yeah,
And it also depends what courts are gonna do this.
yeah,
And they may need money.
yeah.
Courts may need money to do this, where you've got that 1.3, 1.2 million sitting out there.
because part of sales,
Correct.
part of sales is to have a name that people like.
Mhm.
So far, I don't think anybody likes pre-trial, but accountability docket, everybody seems to like that name.
They do.
It's not like it.
We'll figure out something once we figure out what the structure is.
Yeah.
We don't know what that structure is going to be right now.
Do you hear from them? You're not gonna know.
So that's tomorrow. There'll be a new draft. Lily's been working on a new draft. The one thing that I did just talk to Martin about was, and I'm gonna talk to DOC about that. This is something we need to talk to DOC. One of the thinking is when someone comes in for an arraignment, to be arraigned on a charge, before the person is sent either to detention to be a detainee, or they're sent back out in the community, there's a risk assessment done. And they want DOC to do this. And I said, well, how can DOC do this? They don't even know the person. And Martin said to me, oh, that's a good point. I said, unless they've been through the system and have been incarcerated and they have a new charge out there and they've come in for an arraignment, then DOC would have a track record. But if it's a brand new person and they're there before the judge, and the judge wants that information in terms of what's the risk of this person, you're asking DOC to do it. How's DOC going to do that with them standing up there before the judge? DOC doesn't know this person. So that's something we'll have to work through and talk to DOC about. So that's what's in the works for the future.
So have they been given a primer like you just gave us so they can come in with answers, or are we gonna catch them all cold and
I
then?
think we'll catch some of them cold. I'm giving them total primers. I've asked Haley about the positions. I did ask her about,
But that's something that should have been given to us if it is, like Tom was saying, the positions that haven't been filled. They should have said, this is what we're working around. Because I know when I was on first, they gave you all that information.
we haven't gotten into this in this committee yet.
Right.
So I gave Haley a heads up about it. It's in the DOC budget. Okay, E338 is DOC's section of the bill. And I did ask her if you have the accountability docket and you want a P&P person at that docket in the court. She seemed to think they could absorb it in their field offices, but I don't know. But that was last week. That was last Thursday. So outside of that, I don't have anything else. I do go into Transportation Committee, Senate Transportation Committee tomorrow morning at 11:45 to give them any language that we have so far on the non-driver IDs and the driver's license. And we're getting a new draft this afternoon at 3:00. The parole board, I need to talk to Hillary. I'd like to get a draft. Mary Jane was gonna work with the Attorney General's office and DOC, Agency of Human Services, and herself trying to figure out the legal representation piece. And I was gonna sit down with Hillary, kind of broadly put in some language, possibly just as a starting point, in terms of, for the next few years, how the parole board could submit their budget to DOC or the Agency of Services. And what some of those items should be included in the budget. So I wanted to work with Hillary to get a rough draft of that put together. But outside of that, I don't have anything.
You think when you vote on the IDs today, since you need to present it tomorrow, don't you?
I'm not participating. Because we'll probably change it to first draft, the new language. And knowing everybody here, we'll have different. we'll have requests for changes. For that. So we can take a break for 25, 20 minutes, something like that, come back before 3 o'clock.
Mhm.
If people want, unless there's things that people want to talk about.
I had one question. We did have a report due from judiciary about reducing the incarcerated population that was supposed to be back at some point to this committee.
Did we ever get it?
I don't think we did. It was
We don't
judiciary.
really-
There was, yeah. That was one I was actually interested in, because we put it in that omnibus bill last biennium. Do you remember?
Yeah, for the out-of-state.
But we never saw anything.
We're not good at keeping track of reports.
Seems like something you should be in charge of, Gunk.
Keeping reports?
No.
Oh.
Go find it. Maybe Tate does it, maybe it doesn't. I don't know.
Did not receive anything about that.
We were also ones to receive.
Should we ask
Why
for it?
don't we ask for it?
Why don't, yes.
Would it
my
have
joke to
gone
him, I
to
just
the
told him to ask.
General Assembly as a general report at all?
I don't know.
Do you want me to send you the language, Tate?
Sure,
Yeah, okay.
Sort of like the executive order that apparently didn't get executed.
So.
Shall we ask?
Okay.
That
You're over
happens.
to that?
Happens.
Swing's fault.
They worked all weekend.
It's too nice.
They worked all weekend to get the data we
Exactly.
were asking about.
Hey, did I leave that over there? Connor, do I have a thing over there or anything else?
Anything else before we take a break,
ma'am.
folks? Okay, let's take a break and come back about 25 of.